F1 driver academies have been around since 1998, and since then, they've been the primary means for teams deciding who their next hot prospect is going to be. Every team has them as a means for scouting out talent and training them for the big leagues by offering them opportunities, financial support, and training in real F1 facilities, with the intention of elevating them to F1 at some point. With driver academies taking a priority in recent times of being the absolute most important thing for a junior driver, I thought it'd be good to look back at the successes of these academies in the past and see each team's biggest success in these young drivers. One quick mention, these are all going to be graduates of the junior team, meaning that they entered F1 with this team's support. Someone like Oscar Piastri wouldn't count for Alpine's academy because he entered F1 with McLaren, completely separate from Alpine. To begin with, there are actually three teams that I'm not going to mention in this. The first you could probably guess, and that's Racing Bulls, because they have the same academy as Red Bull, so it's no surprise that they'll just be kind of looped in over there. But the other two aren't excluded for the same reason. The other two teams I'm talking about are Aston Martin and Sauber, and both programs have not produced a driver that's reached the F1 level quite yet. For Aston Martin, it's somewhat expected, as they've only signed their first driver to the AMF1 driver development program in 2022, and that was Felipe Drugovich, and as we know, he never got the F1 chance beyond the reserve driver status. The other drivers they have right now are Tina Hausman in F1 Academy, Mary Boya in F3, and Jack Crawford in F2. And all things considered, it's not that crazy that they haven't produced an F1 talent yet, because they've only had one driver that was available for the job, and there isn't much room at the team in general for a rookie as long as Lance Stroll is there. Now on the other hand, Sauber is a bit of a different story. The Sauber junior team became a thing in 2018 when Sauber partnered with Charouz and created a karting team, but they split off and the team was completely rebranded as the Sauber Academy. Now the Sauber Academy has definitely had a lot of drivers, albeit mostly at the karting level, but they have had their fair share of F2 and F3 drivers as well. Some notable names include Liram Zendelli, Zane Maloney, and Théo Pourchaire, along with Callum Ilott being included by technicality for a little bit, but other than Pourchaire, none of them really stuck around in the academy for longer than 1 year. Pourchaire was the only one who really ever had a shot at making it to F1, but after his stint as a reserve driver, and the Sauber Academy fading away as the team turns to Audi, he kind of lost his chance outside of his own control, and the team is going to go without producing an F1 junior driver within their whole tenure. To begin with, we have the Red Bull Academy, which has the most F1 graduates by a long shot, but that is to be expected because they have 4 seats to spread their drivers across. The Red Bull junior team itself was formed in 2001 and started off with 2 drivers, Christian Klein, who was the first Red Bull junior to race in F1 back in 2004, and Sebastian Vettel, who was the first Red Bull junior to win a race a few years later in 2008. Across the years, they've added more and more talent and had some swings and misses on the F1 level. 7 drivers within their academy never made it out of the junior team, with those being Scott Speed, Sebastian Buemi, Jamie Alguersuari, Brendan Hartley, Jean-Eric Byrne, Carlos Sainz, and currently Isaac Hadjar. With the exception of Carlos Sainz, none of those guys had any more F1 reps, but where there are these duds, there were some diamonds Red Bull found as well. The instant names that'll jump out at you would be the 2 4-time world champions in Sebastian Vettel and Max Verstappen, and those 2 are definitely the top of this academy. But you can't discount names of drivers that have had solid careers as well, like Daniel Ricciardo, Alex Albon, and Pierre Gasly, and we're also still waiting to see more from Liam Lawson and Yuki Tsunoda. But in general, they don't really come close to Vettel and Verstappen. On a statistics level, Verstappen is better with more race wins and podiums, but that can also be due to more races in a season in the modern day. But I'll be saying Verstappen takes the cake for Red Bull, but I wouldn't necessarily disagree with you if you were to go with Vettel here. Next comes McLaren, and they were actually the first team to create a driver academy back in 1998 when they signed their first drivers in the form of Nick Heidfeld and Lewis Hamilton. The McLaren Academy did have plenty of drivers across the years, but Lewis Hamilton was the only one to actually make the jump to the F1 level until 2010. Heidfeld debuted with Prost, and others like Jado Vandergaard, Jack Harvey, and Oliver Rowland were not able to perform up to McLaren standards. In total, McLaren's only ever had 4 F1 graduates from their program, and although it's quite obvious the answer here is going to be Lewis Hamilton, I'll let you know who they are. In 2010, it was Kevin Magnussen, who started off well, but only lasted at McLaren for 2 seasons, but still had a solid career. And after that was both Stoffel Van Dorn and Lando Norris. Van Dorn didn't have the best time in F1, but Lando Norris is currently in the championship lead and has amassed 11 wins, but that's still a fraction compared to Lewis Hamilton. A big argument here is that Hamilton's success came primarily at Mercedes, but he did make it in F1 through McLaren, and he still won a championship there in 2008, so we can kind of dismiss that. After McLaren is Mercedes, who, although they were running F1 during the late 2010s, none of the drivers that really succeeded with them in that time were from their own academy. I already mentioned Lewis Hamilton was affiliated with McLaren, but Nico Rosberg and Valtteri Bottas both joined Mercedes through Williams, not affiliated through the team whatsoever. As a matter of fact, Mercedes has only ever actually had 4 drivers from their academy make it through to F1, 3 of which are on the grid currently. The current driver pairing of George Russell and Kimi Antonelli were both brought up through Mercedes and have made a solid impact with the team, but the other 2 haven't raced for the Silver Arrows. The other one currently in the sport is Esteban Ocon, who is a race winner and has made a solid career at Force India, Renault, and now Haas, but he isn't on the same level as Russell. And the other driver not mentioned is Pascal Wehrlein, who was pretty good, but was in a wrong place, wrong time sort of moment in F1. With that being said, the best of the lot is definitely George Russell, as he has multiple race wins and could easily be fighting for a championship if given a car to deliver, but don't rule out Kimi Antonelli because the script could flip in the coming future. Next comes Ferrari, and although they are a team that has seen a lot of success, their academy isn't really where that stemmed from. Ferrari is the team that's had high-profile names like Kimi Räikkönen, Fernando Alonso, Sebastian Vettel, and Lewis Hamilton come in because of their status on the grid, so their whole academy making it to the top team is a little bit more of a recent thing. As a matter of fact, only one academy driver of theirs has actually made it to the top team. Well, 2 if you count Ollie Behrman in Jeddah, and that's Charles Leclerc. The other 3 drivers not mentioned are Sergio Perez, the late Jules Bianchi, and Mick Schumacher, all of which had their bright spots. When it boils down to it, Perez and Leclerc have both had solid careers, and if I had to choose one, I would go with Leclerc, as he has more wins, poles, and podiums, and in context of being in the academy, he did fulfill more for the team, whereas Perez left the academy after only 2 years in F1 to pursue an opportunity at McLaren. Now the next team to the plate is Williams, and the driver academy term gets a little bit loose here, but bear with me. When it comes to Williams, the top driver their academy has produced is Lance Stroll, and you're probably asking me 2 questions. How is Lance Stroll the best? And wasn't Stroll in the Ferrari academy? Well, I'll answer the second question first, and that is that Stroll was in the Ferrari academy from 2010 to 2015, but he left to be signed as a test driver for Williams in 2016, and technically, he joined the academy there for a year. As for the other question as to how Stroll is the best of the bunch, it's because there isn't much else competition. Stroll was the first to be in that Williams academy, and all the other signings to make it to F1 came after 2019, with them being Nicholas Latifi, Jack Aitken, Logan Sargent, and Franco Colapinto. You can get Jack Aitken out of the way, as he only had 1 appearance in the 2020 Sakir Grand Prix to replace George Russell, who was filling in for Lewis Hamilton, and both Latifi and Sargent didn't put up enough performances to really warrant anything better than Stroll. Finally is Colapinto, and given the timing of this, what Stroll recently said about Franco Colapinto hasn't really shown quite enough yet to be better than Stroll. At the end of the day, Stroll has podiums and a pole position, so discredit him all you want, but he has had a decently successful F1 career. Our penultimate entry on the list here is for the Alpine/Renault Academy. Despite it seeming like Alpine has had half of the F2 and F3 grid in their academy over the past couple of years, and being around since 2002, they've actually only ever had 3 F1 graduates. Drivers like Zhou Guanyu and Oscar Piastri were part of the Alpine Academy, but went to other teams in F1 completely unaffiliated, so they don't count here, and that doesn't really leave much. One of the drivers to make it was Jack Doohan, who didn't really get much of a chance, so you can rule him out, but the other 2 came from a bit further back. Both Heikki Kovalainen and Romain Grosjean made appearances with Renault after being affiliated in their junior program, and built solid careers off the back of it. Grosjean was solid at Lotus Renault and built a decent name for himself at Haas, but wasn't quite as good as Kovalainen. Heikki Kovalainen only spent 1 year at Renault before moving to McLaren to swap seats with Fernando Alonso, and that was a good decision for him as he won the 2011 Hungarian Grand Prix and became an F1 race winner, and therefore had the best career out of the Alpine Academy. Finally is Haas, and the reason I left it last is because it's actually here by technicality. Since joining the grid in 2016, Haas has only had 6 junior drivers, 2 of which are from their obligation to sponsor a driver in F1 Academy, but the others weren't exactly great. Santino Ferrucci is finding his footing in IndyCar, but wasn't at the highest level in Europe, and both Arjun Maini and Louis Delatraz weren't up to Haas F1 standards, but the final driver was. Like I mentioned it being a technicality, it's Pietro Fittipaldi, who made those F1 appearances through his reserve role with Haas, where he made 2 starts after Romain Grosjean's incident. Fittipaldi was considered for the Haas seat in 2022 after Haas ditched Mazepin for preseason testing, but he was ultimately overshadowed by Kevin Magnussen. It is a bit boring for that to be the choice for Haas here, but what can you expect from a team that's only had a few junior drivers and mainly fields Ferrari juniors and veterans?